Hello, 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 hello. What are you grateful for this morning? A clean slate. A new moment. To create, to live in alignment with what we want. But it all starts with our state of being. So let us not get stuck in a victim mentality. Regardless of how crazy this world is, let us clear ourselves from within and be open and available to the freshness of this moment, our ability to create what is in our locus of control. And that starts with our attitude. And when we align with gratitude, we make ourselves available to freedom, to liberation, to the power within our bones, within our minds, within our soul. So, hope that you'll take a moment just to conjure gratitude. This morning I am grateful for the coolness of fall. A moment to connect with each and every one of you. It's hot coffee in my cup. And the liberation that comes from aligned information. One thing I've been ruminating on this morning is loving kindness. As many of you know, I practice meditation every day. And there is a far enemy of loving kindness, which is hatred. It's very obvious, right? We know it when we see it. But the sneaky thing is when we get lost in the near enemy, right? And the near enemy is a misunderstanding of loving kindness that sneaks in at any moment in time and subtly, sneakily derails us. And I want to ask you, do any of you know what the near enemy of loving kindness is? What is the misunderstanding of love that most people fall into? Or maybe you've fallen into it yourself. I'll just give you the answer. It's attachment. Unhealthy attachment, where we are clinging to the other, whether it's in a parent-child relationship or a romantic relationship, or many times even a teacher-student dynamic. We won't have a free-flowing loving kindness that is reciprocal and open for both parties on either side, right? Instead, we'll find ourselves throughout the day experiencing a whole range of emotions. We'll feel really connected to our partner in those intimate, quiet moments, and then they'll do something we dislike, we'll disapprove, and we'll try to call them out and basically cultivate codependence, right? An unhealthy attachment that says, you have to be a certain way for me to be okay. That can happen in those three relationships. Those are the main ones, right? Parent-child, child-parent, whatever role you're playing. You might be playing both in this phase of your life. Romantic relationships, of course, but also in student-teacher dynamics, right? Occasionally I'll experience that myself as I'm in this role of teaching, where a student will look to me for a certain level of comfort at all times. But they totally lose the fact that I'm on my own journey and that I have a limited capacity as well. And I've experienced that with my teachers along the way. So when we approach ourselves and we're trying to get free, fully free, we have to ask ourselves, not so much how the far enemy is coming in to derail us, right? The far enemy of loving kindness being hatred. It's very obvious to see. We know when we're angry. We know when we're upset. We know when we've lost ourselves and we distance ourselves from others. But the near enemy, it's adjacent to, it disguises itself as a variation on the actual goal, true loving kindness, open, free, flowing, reciprocal, liberating. And that near enemy is attachment, unhealthy clinging. So if we take a moment to look at the qualities of each, right? pure loving kindness. What are the qualities of pure loving kindness? One of the ways I think of this is through this story, an old Zen story. And the Zen story talks about having limitations on our love, right? So if you take a handful of salt and pour that salt into a cup, very quickly that cup is undrinkable, right? It's very salty, not a flavor you want to consume, probably unhealthy for your body in that concentration. However, if you take the same cup of salt and pour it into a river, flowing river, the river is renewed at every moment and fresh and open, and the flavor doesn't change. The river can hold almost anything, even something, a large truckload of salt over time, if you allow it to flow, right? So this is how we liberate ourselves, by having a free, flowing, open love. That's the difference of real loving kindness that's open, flowing, and free, that has a large capacity for life, that creates space for newness and freshness of any moment without holding on or feeling limited, versus a small, limited view of love or of self, right? So if you think of attachment as the near enemy of love, loving kindness, you can see how that small container, right? We put all these limits on our love. Well, you have to be X, Y, and Z way specifically, or I don't love you anymore. Or now you're my enemy. Now you're against me. When in reality, what we are projecting onto the other is our misunderstanding of ourselves, right? We don't realize that our mental formations have created the perimeter that is this cup, right? That are these walls that are keeping us in, keeping others out. Versus realizing that we are limitlessly expansive beings. Or rather, we get into what we talked about recently in the Beautiful Souls community, the difference of seeing yourself as an individual separate entity, and others, the no self, as an individual separate entity, walking through life as an antagonist or protagonist in the variety of stories that we experience told by ourselves or others, constantly at war, versus seeing self as a process and seeing all facets of life as a part of that process, therefore seeing no separation between how you feel, what you're experiencing, and what's triggering that experience. In that way, we can liberate ourselves, recognizing that my emotional state is connected to my worldview. And when my worldview is connected to the flow like that river, I remain open and free to every experience, available to an expanded view of life, an expanded view of relationship, an expanded view of myself. But that's not always as easy as it sounds. Simple concept. I think many of us can understand that. But the ease in practice is not always available to us. Someone asked me earlier what I've been reading. One of my favorite authors of late and teachers is Pima Chodron. This is, hopefully the light will balance out a little bit. The Places That Scare You. The Places That Scare You. And one of the themes is essentially being present to our self-deception. It can be tricky because many times we do this unconsciously, right? We'll hold a belief that we don't realize is actually an illusion. And it's usually because we don't want to feel what's happening underneath the surface. It's just a part of being human. But if we can allow ourselves to be open to life as a process, self as a process, there's an opportunity for clear seeing and an opportunity to embrace even the changes that happen in everyday life, which is essentially the gateway to the heart of authenticity, the gift of being your most authentic self, your most authentic version, right? Is embracing the change that is happening in every moment, knowing that you have the strength within you to face it and to transcend it. But in order to get there, you must start with the foundation, which for many of us is letting go of this individuated self and the no self, right? And transcending into a space of understanding that self is a process. Even if you want to look at the things that you identify as self, where you're from, what you believe in, religious, spiritual affiliation, political affiliation, rights and values, it's all relative to the experiences you've had, the people you've encountered, and how those experiences have landed within you and your response to them, right? You might be able to look at your siblings and say, well, we grew up in the same house and they're very different people. That's because their response to those experiences were very different than yours, right? And so it's a combination of everything that you experience in each and every moment and how you make sense of it from the moment you were born, right? Before you had a verbal language understanding of the world. And so we took in things in images, energy, and emotion, right? And we processed that from our very early age until today. And by the time of 7, 8 years old, you had what is understood as a default mode network, right? A default way of thinking, a bunch of neurons firing and wiring together that says, oh, when I feel this kind of energy, it means this kind of thing, right? And I feel this kind of energy, it means that kind of thing. I see this expression, right? Because we have all of these associations, right? So like for many people pleasers, when our parents are upset, we have the response that, oh, it's my fault. I have to take care of this person emotionally, whatever that might mean. And you have this pattern of self-betrayal, small, limited view of love, right? The near enemy, attachment. Okay? So knowing that that is all there, recognizing all of that was a process. The process is still happening. We're still redefining ourselves in each and every moment. Each day you go to work, each day you feel what others are saying, and whether we can feel it all and we experience it with openness, or we experience it with a level of resistance, antagonism, protagonism, right? The stories we tell around each experience and say, oh, I'm more of this or I'm less of that, or maybe we can seek more clearly and realize that each person is creating their own emotional experience each day, and we don't make it about us. But all of that is a self-actualizing process that's being created moment to moment, breath to breath, thought to thought, story to story, experience to experience. And if you were in the same age range, this midlife range, we've recognized a lot of those patterns that aren't serving us very well. And so we are starting to make some different decisions, experience these old situations from a new perspective, right? But the self is always expanding, right? One of my favorite books that talks about this is The Wisdom of Insecurity. It's by Alan Watts. It's a message for the age of anxiety, he calls it. It's written in the 60s, which is funny because it's part of the human conundrum. We always exist with a certain level of anxiety as a collective because we're misunderstanding what's really happening in each situation most of the time, right? We're doing this separate, ego-centered view, holding that view and looking at life in that way. versus understanding that life is inherently insecure. Right? Life is inherently changing always in each and every moment. Life inherently is asking you to create with me, to change with me. When we allow ourselves to surrender those hard, rigid containers, then we're open and available again to pure, loving kindness. And the best way we can cultivate that is starting with the thing we have the most control over, which is ourselves. So practicing self-loving kindness, right? So noticing, how do you talk to yourself? Are you offering messages of self-loathing, right? Self-deprecation? What is that saying about what we believe of ourselves? Because I know you would never say that to your friend, your family members that you really love and care for, that you're close to, right? Even if you understand their weaknesses or their flaws, you wouldn't communicate that way to them. So we start there. Well, why am I communicating this way to myself? What is this pattern showing me about myself? Letting go of the self-deception. And a large part of that is recognizing that, we have a belief somewhere that says my value is dependent on how I show up in this space, which is not so. It's not a fact. It's just a belief, right? So when you take time to slow down and understand that the foundation of how we exist in the world is predicated on no self-beliefs for many of us, because that's how our society is developed, so that others can have more control. It's a longer, larger discussion for another day. But that, in tandem with all of the stories we've heard, witnessed, and perpetuated within ourselves from the point of our birth through today, primarily the ones we've learned and put in place unconsciously up until the age of 7 or 8, and now looking at them at this stage and recognizing what has been can be no longer. It has gotten me here, but it can take me no further. So how do I become present with myself, or this selfing process that is happening or has happened, in a way where the next stage in the process, the next breath, the next story is liberating, is freeing, aligns me with true loving kindness and authenticity, right? That's what we're looking for. True loving kindness and authenticity. True loving kindness and authenticity. Right? We always say real love. We always quantify love, not realizing that, if you got to quantify it, there's not several versions of love. There's love and near enemies, which usually is an attachment. Trying to get something from the other, and the other trying to get something from you. Codependency. Right? Call a spade a spade. Love is unconditional. Love is flowing like the river. Love is liberating. Is reciprocal. Is not asking. Right? So this is the journey that we are all on. So when we can see self as a process and recognize that everybody else is also in a process, we start letting go of these rigid identities, which is a large part of the problem. Putting stones up, bricks up, and no. The reality is more like the ocean. We're all waves in this one process that's happening, and sometimes we come together. But if we can stay soft and open and not rigid, the flow, that energy can stay in motion and dissipate to the other waves, and we can realize that we are all one, all part of the same ocean, all made of the same stuff, having the same experience, and different points of view. When we can see that, life gets interesting. You can experience some wild circumstances with more openness, freedom, and liberation. But realize that the liberator is you. when you show up present, open, and available to all that is happening within you. And when I say within you, I mean, okay, you have an argument, someone does something you don't like, and then you go your separate way and you replay that argument a gazillion times for days or weeks or months or in some cases years or tragically decades, some of us. And we perpetuate sorrow and suffering on our own, though the moment was a moment, right? So how we shape our story shapes our lives, it shapes our experience. Self as a process, we're telling these stories, right? But when we're rigid, we stop the flow of life. So learning how to be fluid in our identities, right? When I say identities, recognizing that, okay, in that moment I was mad, in this moment I'm happy, in this moment I'm a bit melancholy, I'm a bit pensive. Right now I'm experiencing several things, right? Being present to that truth is what will actually liberate you. Someone asked me the book I was reading. It's The Places That Scare You. Pima Chodron. Been going through this with the Beautiful Souls community. It's a community I host. I'm a meditation teacher, guitar player, musician, and a space holder of loving kindness. And so every morning at 7:30 Central, I lead the group through practices that help us see ourselves with a more grounded, open lens so that we get to cultivate and practice compassion. Because this is something that we all have a lifetime of practicing the other thing, so that pattern's stronger within us. So we can practice the pattern of gentle, steadfast presence and loving kindness. We get to shift the way that we see the world and view the world and exist within ourselves. And that's what this journey is all about. And I encourage you to find a practice that works for you. Every year I start off with a 30-day meditation challenge, and for 2025 we're having another one. Starts the first Monday, which I think is January 6th. And I'll be going deep into this topic. This year's challenge is all about the heart of authenticity. It's about self-love. And so each evening at 7:30 Central, I'll be doing a live meditation and talk where we dive into boundaries, how to love ourselves well, how to be compassionate with ourselves and others, and how to identify what it is we're really seeking and wanting in this life. I'm not talking about the house or the job or the money. I'm talking about a soul level fulfillment and understanding of who you are and why you're here. Right? What are you choosing in each moment? And can you be with the tapestry of ideas, experiences, stories, and narratives that have brought you to this moment in this particular form? And can you be present to the gift of liberation when you get to reshape all of those things that are in greater alignment, in a way that is in greater alignment with what's really here at the core of your being? So, I hope that our short time here has been beneficial and resonant in some way. Maybe you feel a shift in your energy just by sitting with some of these ideas and shifting your perspectives, right? Maybe you feel a bit lighter and brighter. Maybe you had a cathartic release like tears, or a bit of tension released in your body, right? We just changed our state of being simply by being with these ideas. One morning, I've only been here about a half hour so far. So if that resonates for you and that's true, imagine the shift you can have if you do this daily, right? Take time to be with it. I've been doing this for a very long time. Every morning I start, whether I'm here with you or not. I have a practice that I've cultivated over years through, ultimately, the core is mindfulness, being present. So if you're curious about diving deeper, I encourage you to find more of my content online, or more meditation teachers, or grab this book. If you sign up now, The Heart of Authenticity, you can find it at my website. We'll be starting the year off strong. And if you can't make it live, all of the recordings are available for you For those who are different time zones or can't make it. But look for the Heart of Authenticity on my website at asoulcalledjoel.com and the Beautiful Souls community, because we practice meditation every morning and it's ongoing. I love you all. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with me and ultimately yourself. Because as we each heal everything that's going on within us, we bring more healing into the world by letting go of the antagonist, protagonist, and realizing that each beautiful soul is on their journey, trying to find their way in the vast ocean of life. So, I love you all. Be well, beautiful souls, and I hope to see you soon. Much love and light. Peace.